on evaluation and ESD, and this is the more comfortable area where people would be saying, oh yes, evaluation of something. That is the conventional way. But remember that we are here reviewing ESD as evaluative learning, and we ask the same question: what is being evaluated here? And it might be a course, but we've been talking about always probing deeper into saying, on the course, what evaluation is being done, and the evaluative dimensions of ESD then become revealed to us. Then, of course, who is doing the evaluative learning? Is it an outside evaluator? Well, the outside evaluator needs to take very close account of who is actually doing the evaluative learning and how is that learning taking place. So the participatory and inclusive dimensions of ESD come really strongly to the fore here. And then what value is being created, or what change is happening, or what benefits are being accrued. So this is the more comfortable part of conventional evaluation, but one has to look back into the ESD as an evaluative learning, and we're going to look at collaborative monitoring and evaluation of learning, and we're going to look at appreciative inquiry tools in the examples that follow. Very important here is the assessing learning outcomes, value creation and change in evaluative learning networks. This is a theme that is starting to come out now in UNESCO, where learning assessment is part of evaluating and monitoring more broadly. So the broader view is starting to come through. It refers to a wide range of methods and tools used to evaluate, measure, and document learning outcomes and learning processes, and learning progress in this case. We have gone much more deeply into the learning processes that are generating outcomes through the agency of the participants. So it's about gathering information from multiple sources, including the participants, on what learners know and what they can do with what they have learned. It also provides information on the process and context that enable learning, as well as those that may be hindering the learning process. So this is much more sort of like a conventional judgmental evaluation process. And as a teacher, we have to make judgments about learning, but we also need to be in ESD as evaluative learning much more inclusive in the way that we do things. So in working with evaluation and ESD in the regional centers of expertise, what we have found is that you really need to take an appreciative review type process, for which we've developed this iterative evaluative cycle and a toolkit. So the RCE set out to strengthen ESD through evaluative cycle of appreciative monitoring, value creation and assessment, and critical reflection. And here the whole process is not so much centered on the technical achievements and instrumental outputs, but what people are doing, what people are experiencing, and how their agency is producing change. So ESD evaluation processes develop around shared concern, using the SDGs as a roadmap to future sustainability. And we called this constitutive evaluation, the evaluation that's being done by people to constitute their ESD process. Then, ongoing assessment of ESD through appreciative review. This is like the monitoring part that assess how participants are working together and learning-led change is developing. So here we call this the appreciative inquiry, and of course this has been a strong shift in evaluative work in the last decade in the professional sphere of evaluation. And these are obviously connected, as are the idea of the value creation, assessment of the value being created, can provide information on the quality, scale, and impact of learning actions. And here Etienne Wenger's work is particularly useful as a tool for collaborative and co-engaged evaluative work that probes down into the value that's been created in the learning that's being done together. And then we've got developmental evaluation, which is about the evaluation is not a judgmental process, but part of a process of working together to accumulate data, to develop and assess and report and build strength in an iterative process of expanding work where people are being able to work more critically in more depth in the work that they're doing. So this was the approach that we took in handprint care as well as in the RCE work in the with the United Nations University in Southern Africa. And if we look at the toolkit in overview and to summarize the process that we've looked at through these series of 5 presentations, constitutive evaluation provides a baseline of assessments around the RCE core elements. And a teacher could use constitutive evaluation as a way of saying, how did the group in the classroom become constituted as an ESD action group in action learning? And then including the stakeholders, getting the stakeholder accounts. The stakeholder accounts not being for just an external process, but also for themselves as a reflective process, so they can reflect on the processes and projects going along. And this would be a monitoring type and reflexive type of evaluation. Then developmental evaluation, using the data and information to propose ways to strengthen the strategic goals, the outcomes, the learning processes, and then value creation assessment, digging down and to say, what's coming out? What value is being created? How worthwhile have these activities been? And what can we make of what's coming out of them? So the outputs can produce reports, case study, photo case studies, capacity development strategies, as we did in the evaluative work that we were doing with the RCE in the Eastern Cape of Southern Africa. And then these can be applied to a meta-evaluation where you can look back and say, okay, how have we worked so far? What practices have been effective? What is the evidence of this? And what theory of change is coming out or operating in the work that we're doing? So that when you look back across the 5 presentations, we're starting to say that there is this inclusive expansion of evaluation in ESD's evaluative learning around the SDGs as a tool for evaluation to explore matters of concern. And here a theory of change can be a very important way of reflecting about this. And then we've got the as evaluation, SDGs and competence specification in the inclusion of the inquiry with backcasting and significant learning, but participant agency centered. And then standing back and looking at the value that's being created and assessment indicators and scaling in a review process. So this reflects an inclusive expansion of evaluation. If we start where we finish, outcomes can be assessed through an evaluation process. Participants need to be included, and participants are increasingly at the center of evaluation work in ESD as evaluative learning. And then the ESD processes themselves are expanding all of the time. So we've got this expanding scope of evaluation research, evaluation in classroom settings, evaluation in community projects, and even at a country level, where measures of outcomes, impact, and scale are important. But they're not the only focus, and they're not that valuable in themselves unless the participants are involved in the deliberations and in the appreciations and insights that are coming. So the evaluation, who is it for? Is it for some outside body? Mostly the evaluation in ESD is for us, for the people who are working together on change. And then the SDG context, theory, and of learning and change becomes really important here as well. So in this way, we're looking at an expanding and changing and more integrated evaluation in ESD, and then of ESD and as ESD, and of course we have the SDGs as a useful tool to guide the work that we do in all of the situations in which we're involved. And at the center of this RCE toolkit, we've put the participants. And then it expands both towards what's happening and what has come out of what's been happening. So here again are some references that you might find useful to deepen your own thinking and to expand the horizons of the work that you're doing in ESD and evaluation, and the evaluation of ESD as an evaluative process. I hope you've enjoyed this series and that you find it useful in the work that you're doing.